Welcome to Underdog Rising with your host, Wade Bozane, where we ignite your journey from humble beginnings to greatness through inspiring tales of top executives and entrepreneurs. Welcome, everybody, to Underdog Rising. Today, we have Amy Clark with us. Amy is the founder of Growth Minded Leadership Group. She is also the Chief Human Resources Officer for BBB National Programs. And on top of all that, she is a two-time best-selling author. Amy, thanks so much for being with us. We're excited to have you here today.
Thanks so much for having me. Good to be with you. Look forward to our conversation.
From here, we'll shift and transition just into, our first question, which is just diving a little bit into you, yourself, your past, if you don't mind, just sharing your underdog story and you'll walk through your journey from after college to where you are today so that our listeners can better understand you.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. I will start in college because I took a path of college part-time, working full-time. So I decided to do that. And I had jobs in, what I thought I was going to do for the rest of my life was accounting.
Oh, wow.
So I did that again, to contribute in a way to the household that was needed. And I thought at that time too, what a great experience to learn in the college setting and then, learn how to apply it as I get that experience. So that was really, really helpful. And so I kind of joke about it because I met my husband before I graduated high school, and he only knew me as a student for the first 13 years we were together. It's like, you going to stop being a student? Well, first of all, I never stopped being a student. A formal student in university, 13 years to my bachelor's to my MBA. I had some curves around in there, and so the interesting thing is you go through college, even if you're full-time and you start your work life. I think the benefit I had is I realized fairly quickly, I don't think I want to do accounting and finance the rest of my life. And so I really did feel like an underdog there and chose to say it's okay because this is not really, waking me up in the morning. This is not
right.
I'll do it, but it just doesn't excite me. So I took that time, to really learn and go through, more of the business type work and then go into other forms of HR then at that point. I had been working for an automobile dealership for a few years. And again, when I thought I was on this accounting path, I had the opportunity to get into human resources. Then it was called person, but human resources. And that's where I'm like, this is interesting. I kind of like this. I like this side of the work. And, and so then I shifted my major and, started my career in HR. I always thought to myself, I was going to finish my undergrad and get my MBA because I knew that was something I have always thought to myself, I want to be known as a business person first, business-minded first that happens to have expertise in my area. I happen to have expertise in HR. I happen to have expertise in leadership development, those kinds of things. But I've always thought business-minded first. And my trajectory has helped me do that. So I worked my way through, and it was interesting. The first, you get your real job. I had a job, but my first real job was that I felt was when I had people reporting to me when I started there. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is really different now. It's not just about me anymore. I can't just count on what I do. It's about what around me are doing. And so that was a huge shift in thinking for me. I was, how do I do this? Made some mistakes along the way for sure. Learned quite a bit for sure. But that was my start of my time, my 15 years with Sallie Mae financial service industry. And so really grew out of that into, okay, this was my first manager title. I have some status now, this is a thing. And really taking me along the path of ingraining myself in what the business areas do and how I can help them achieve that through their people, through their leadership. And so that had been a focus for for all my years. Now at Sally Mae, I had a lot of opportunity to move around. I focused on putting myself and making myself visible, to show that I could solve problems, that I had an interest, that I wanted to be outside of what I, did in every day. I led the employee relations group there, and that was essentially the employee experience, how people felt about the work they were doing, and helping the leaders do that for them. And then, more opportunity came up, and I again positioned myself for that. I knew that there was changes within that company happening. And so I raised my hand and I said, you know what? I'd like to do this part of HR now. How will that go? And that led us to move to Delaware. So we're in Northern Delaware, and we've been here about 10 years. So that created the opportunity. I think that was the pivotal moment for me, because it got me into some really deep work, strategy work. I saw the level of the work it changed, the scope changed overnight. It was amazing. And so those are some of the things that, in my journey. And then, like anything, I was with Sally Mae for 15 years, and I was thinking about my next. And so they have been going through some changes, which impacted my job, which it does sometimes. And so I took that step out, and now I'm doing two things, which is awesome, as you said. And so it had me, my role with BBB National Programs has me thinking about business in a very different way, mission driven, purposeful, and not that it wasn't in my other jobs, but you're a public company, you answer to shareholders. It's just the way it is. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And we still answer to people. Of course, we answer to the people we serve, but it's in a very different way. And so it's very rewarding to get to do that. The feel of it, the work is different. So that's where I am.
Every individual has their own career path and journey, and it's just amazing to see where you are now after going through what you went through and all the different diverse changes, right? Not only maybe roles within companies or changes within, at different companies itself, but also they all have their own essence of the underdog story as well. And I think, with you having written your book, Growth Point as well, like I'd love to dive into that a little bit more. Like what sort of inspired you to, from the corporate world to then write the book Growth Point? And could you share sort of a key takeaway that might, help young professionals?
Yeah, absolutely. I had been thinking about a book for several years, and part of it was people would joke with me, given the work I do, you really need to write a book about this stuff. And so you say, okay, I have gained quite a bit of wisdom over the years, and it's interesting. And it's interesting. Every time I'm asked this question, I think back, and it was just this day, and I, just talking with various people in my closest circles, and it's, why not do that? I mean, I keep saying, oh, I'll get to that, but why not now? Part of it was I didn't consider myself a writer. I didn't really like it.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you know where it came from? It came from the role I played at Sally Mae for a few years, where I would do like different things, like, employee relations stuff. And it required you to document, what you're doing and investigations and stuff. And I was just like, oh God, dreadful. I have to write all this stuff. And it kept that kept coming into my mind when I thought about writing. And then I realized, well, it doesn't have to be that. It's what I want it to be. So let's just do it. And I got in touch with somebody, and actually she worked at Sally Mae as well. And she became a hybrid book publisher, part of her work, and called her. I said, hey, this is what I'm thinking. She's, I'm telling you, you need to do this. And certainly part of it was to get recognition. I mean, we want that. We want that validation. It feels good to have something out there that we can talk about, that we're close to. And so much of it was about telling my story too, because Growth Point is about my leadership story and the leadership story of people I've coached over the years. And what it takes to really grow. I mean, grow seems like, well, yeah. Okay, but what does it really take to get the most out of your growth and your learning? Because I remember so many times I dealt with this, and the people I worked with too, is you'd for instance, you'd go to have a presentation, or you'd submit a proposal, a major project, or something like that. And, you say to yourself, I didn't quite hit that. I know I could have done better on that one. Or you fumbled when you were in a meeting. Those things happen. They still happen.
Yeah.
They will always happen. But here's the thing. I think what I found is we weren't taking that and saying, okay, what am I learning from that? And how do I put it in place today so it helps me tomorrow? I feel like we took it and then we're off to the races on something else. And then like, wait a minute, what was that? Yeah, I did that. I can't quite put my finger on why that happened the way it did. And so, what I wanted to do with Growth Point is create this framework to help people think about, when you have a vision for what you want to become and you understand where your gaps are today, and then you put some plans in place, you are now more mindful of what your ins and outs every day, of where you really hit it out of the park. That was awesome. What helped you do that? Keep doing it. Or a little bit more here. And when you have this framework there, it's so much easier to go back and say, all right, if I just tweak the dial here, if I just add this here, that'll really carry me forward much farther than I otherwise would have. So I enjoyed the whole writing process of it. And I connected to a playlist. Music is in my family. Music has been in my life. I was actually going to be a singer before being an accountant. Imagine that.
No way.
Into this, yeah. But I sang in musicals, all these kinds of things. And so music is close to my heart. And I thought about a playlist. We think of playlists today. A playlist gives you flexibility and options. It's like the mood you're in, what you're looking to do, or you're trying to get yourself back to a place where you were inspired and the song does that for you. Those kinds of things. And this framework is kind of like this playlist. You start, you create it, but you kind of rewind, go back, forward, depending on where you are in the moment. So it's something that gives people flexibility when they think about their own career, their own professional growth or personal growth as well.
I think that's phenomenal because you touched on the key element, right? Like where individuals need to identify those growth points within their careers and then analyze them. So often I think when you're first starting out in your career, you just do, and then you move on to the next, like you stated, but it's really good to sit there and analyze each and every single one of those moments so that you can identify, right? Like, what did I do? What was good? What was bad? Okay, this is the area where I need to grow. And I think through all of that, there's so many little nuggets of wisdom. And I kind of just you've transitioned through a lot, and there's been a lot of different choices and creative elements that you've brought into your career. So if you could go back, right, and give yourself one piece of advice, like what would that be?
People are not thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are.
That's so impactful. Would you mind just elaborating on that a little bit more for the listeners?
Yes. I spent so much time wondering what people thought of me. Oh, I bet they're thinking, because I just left this meeting, I bet they're like going over and over, I can't believe Amy said this, did this, didn't do this. I would do that. Or I wonder if so-and-so thinks I'm good enough to do this. And I had to learn, listen, it's important to know, you want to know what people think. You want people to feel good about what you do. We do.
Yes.
And at the same time, it can get to be too much where you start to lose yourself. And that's what it was for me. And I talk about this too, that there were many years where things were awkward. I felt awkward because I was so focused on what others were doing or what they could be thinking about me. And like, okay, I'll take a bit from here, here, and here, and here. And I was like pieces of a puzzle that never went together. So, it's like, wait a minute, I can't get this together. What's happening? So that's probably the biggest thing I would say. And and I was more focused on who I should be than who I really was. And I need to
Mm,
figure that out. And I think for anybody that in college, starting their career or mid professional life, please, it's so important. You just define who it is for you. It doesn't mean that you're then arrogant and you're not disrespectful. It means that you
correct.
show up in a way that is genuine, that people just want to be around you
Mm.
because the ad that you give them to their life. And listen, I did that. There were times I know I did that for people, but inside I'm like, there's more to me than this. So
And you brought that out, which is
yeah.
amazing. I think, like you said, don't be going the arrogant side of things, but
Mhm.
be true to yourself. Don't try and fit into a mold that
Yeah.
you think you have to be placed into. It's like really set your own path and break through that mold and bring in a little bit of your personality and characteristics, because that's most likely why you got hired in the first place, right? Because of
You're right.
yourself and
Yes.
how you are and the elements that you can bring to the workplace. So how did you deal with moments of doubt, especially in environments where you might have felt like one of the few women in the room?
Yeah. Yeah. It took, you know, and I look at it today and I say to myself, confidence is not a choice.
Mm,
It's not an
that's
option.
deep.
It's not an option. It's like you do it. It's not, I
Mm,
will have confidence. I won't. You will.
mm.
You will be confident. And and listen, it's more than affirmations. It's more than standing in front of the mirror in your pose. You do those things. Um, but it does come along with experience. And here's the thing: I I'm I say confidence is not an option. At the same time, I also know that when I go into the room, I need to feel good about what I know. I need to make sure I know the people that are sitting around me. And if I can share a story that comes to mind, and it was um, when I had first moved to Delaware and my new role. Part of what I did was within development and culture building, shaping, those kinds of things. And so this was my first co-facilitation around with the executive team, mostly men,
Okay.
me and one other woman in the room. And I truly did feel like the underdog at that point because I looked around this room. I'm like, oh man, these people are so way beyond me. How do
Mm,
I, you start, and I'm like, wait a minute, how will they know if if I go off script? They're not going to know. They don't know my script.
very true.
They
Very
don't.
true.
Um, I think my biggest worry it's going to be the challenges, and so I decided in that moment that I was going to lead with this quiet confidence and be curious. I learned that from my dad.
That's wonderful.
Many years, his quiet confidence was just amazing, and and I remember this one moment. I was talking about results from the survey we did, and my recommendations, my proposal on how we need to be thinking about some things. And I remember one of the executive leaders, senior in his role, he says to me, be careful what you say. And in that moment, I was just like, and I thought to myself, what did I just say? So, you're kind of like, wait a minute, what did I just say?
Yeah.
So it was like this, you think about, okay, I'm going to go lead with quiet confidence and curiosity. And so I said to him, I said, tell me how you see it. Yeah, I felt small in that moment. He did make me feel small. Because the way he said it,
Hmm.
and again, you don't always remember what people say, but you remember how they make you feel, right? And
Yes.
that moment, I felt like everybody else was getting bigger, and I was just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And and I'm sure a variety of things with that. But what that did in that moment was like, I'm going to choose to be the leader I want every one of these people to be. And so tell me how you see it because I want to know.
Yeah.
And I remember it led to different conversations. Now we didn't agree. We're not always going to agree. But I think if again it comes back to being authentic, being true to you, because when you're not, if it's awkward for you, it's going to be awkward for other people. And they're going to see through it. And you're going to have a hard time influencing, a really, really hard time.
Mm.
And so that So I want to make sure I know my stuff. I know the audience, and I go in there with this. Here's how I'm going to lead today.
You need, in a sense, trailblazers like yourself to kind of go through those struggling points so that you can help other
Mhm.
individuals, and I think so often we go through our career journeys, and it's amazing to see once you're at the position, say, such as yourself, where you are today, and you reflect on where you've been and all those
Yeah,
elements of influence that have made you who you are today, writing books like Growth Point, and then
yeah,
being able to influence and give back to others on what you've learned so they can learn quicker or faster and identify that, they can be genuine to themselves and, not have to doubt in any essence of that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
kind of in that same vein, you talk about on LinkedIn, like about this like happiness trap, right? And
Oh, yeah,
you mentioned that many people often think like, oh, I'll be happy when I get promoted or I get to
yeah,
the next level. Like, how did your perspective on happiness and success evolve over your career?
yeah. Because for many years it was about status and chasing it,
I, I
chasing
think
the title.
I think it's that way for a lot of people,
Yeah,
So
because you know what, the leaders you're around, um, in their words or actions, subtly or whatever, it
mm,
it it lands that way to you. And so I better get myself here. Oh, I'll be happy when, because for me, I said that, and it was when I was um, doing I was creating work and creating new ways of thinking. And I thought to
mm,
myself, man, I'm feeling pretty bummed about this because I'm not getting the recognition for it. That's not right. And so next to me just got promoted. I'm like, what did they do? And again, this is the whole
mm,
thing of the mindset of, all right, comparing to me to somebody else is it doesn't help the situation. It is about me. And so choose to be happy today. You're not, things will not always happen in the way you want them to. They
mm,
just won't. And choose to be happy today and find what it is that you are really, really, really good at. I mean, really good at. And I'm not just saying HR, that's not what I mean. Like,
mm.
you're really good at connecting people so they get stuff done, as an example, right? You
Yeah.
keep putting that out there to show what you're really good at, and that'll just start making you happy in and of itself. But I've
Mm,
gone from that status to being fulfilled, because wherever you work, I mean, unless you're your own, you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, they're going to have to make a decision about you at some point, or you choose to make the decision. But I really do think it is about the fulfillment you have in the work you do is what creates happiness. And if you're not getting that where you are, think about, okay, am I missing it? Is it there and I'm just
mm,
not seeing it? Or how do I get that in another way? Um,
mm,
and so I think particularly going from financial services to the nonprofit space has also helped me see this in a different way as well. In that it's just really cool when you get to be in so many things and just get to get, and I know that sounds such a simple way to say it, but it really is. I mean, when you see, like, the work you do, or that you have the opportunity to be part of a change of something, man, I mean, go for it and do it. It doesn't matter if it doesn't matter what your title is at the point, do it, because at some point you just got to trust the wait. Things will happen,
mm.
you know? And it's hard. I know it's hard. I've been there. But the more you choose happiness, the better you will be, because over time it'll start to impact you, and not in a good way. And you just don't want that for
Mm.
yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's if you focus on happiness or have working on that mindset, I think
Mm-hmm.
that energy will, it'll go out into the world as well, and then
Yeah.
people will be affected by that. You'll start to see opportunities coming your way because, it's just having that positive mindset definitely changes the current circumstances that you're in. And, one thing that I often focus on is it's not what you look at, it's what you see. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that is, for some individuals, it can be very profound because sometimes you might look at the current situation, but if you can change what you see instead of seeing the negative, and you try
Yeah.
and see the positive out of it. And also reflection is a really big one, right? Looking at
Yeah.
where we've come from to where we are today and being happy with where we are, because what they don't realize is when they get there, they don't look back and realize they are where they wanted to be, but now they're not really grateful for where they are because they want the
Yeah.
next phase of life.
Yeah.
And I think that, that ties into like habits and philosophies. From
Yeah.
your side of things, can you share if there's any personal habits or philosophies that have helped you just grow over the years, or just helped you throughout your career journey?
I believe in lifelong learning. I mean,
That's
in
great.
curiosity. And what I mean by that is you ask yourself, okay, in this situation, how could I be wrong? Or you're asking yourself, what am I avoiding? And I know those are both are negative statements, but there's a reason for that, because how could I be wrong? Meaning, oh, there is another thing that's possible here. There is somebody else that might know an easier way to do this than I do.
Mm.
Those are things. That's what I mean by lifelong learning. Yeah, picking up books, reading, of course, professional development, of course. Lifelong learning means you are taking that, and now you're looking at your present situation saying, okay, I know I handled it this way before, but I know my situation is different today. What other way is there to see it? Am I relying on outdated instincts or philosophies here? And really question
Mm.
yourself, because we can get comfortable in that. Well, it's worked for me before. Don't I fix it if it's not broken.
Yeah.
But you can prevent something from being broken 5 years from now if you just made a tweak. You know, and so
Ooh.
that that is something to think about. So that's
Yeah.
very deep. I know. it's
Uh,
and it does just require. At least, how could I be wrong about this?
Yeah. Wow. No, I was still thinking about that one because I think that
Yeah.
is very impactful, because
Yeah.
sometimes we don't think about that, right? Because we live
Yeah.
in the now versus thinking about the future. But it is sort of that like a ripple effect. You do one thing and then it can, totally shift and alter the course of your life. And that's just so fascinating. And
Yeah.
you were mentioning, doing continuous learning and being
Right.
curious. So one thing I'm currently curious about
Yeah.
is how many, or let's just put it this way, at any given moment in time, how many tabs do you have open on your computer screen?
Oh dear. It's really embarrassing because um, I can't really count them, or else I'm going to get dizzy.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. That's a lot.
Listen to me. And so now I have to explain, right? So this isn't no, but seriously, there is too many. There are
Mm.
always too many.
I mean, we live in the information age,
Yeah.
so that's why. I mean, I'm the same way. There's multiple
Yeah.
different tabs that I have open. Sometimes I try to work to close them out, but and
Yes.
I think that that's almost an element as well for like younger individuals, is learning that sort of tab management. Like no one would think of that, but there is literally such a thing as tab management. So, and then
If
just
there's a
an
class on that, I'd like to know.
if there's anybody out there that knows anything on tab management, please let us
Please,
know
let
so
us know. Drop me a
we
line.
can grow. That's it. That will be our growth point, right?
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
so, and then in that same line of things, what apps or plugins or software do you use that might be optimizing or making your life easier, if there are any?
One that is making my life easier, and it's really, it is the Notes app on my phone.
Honestly, I love the Apple Notes app.
It's so funny. Like this is the thing though. So I use it when I have like this writing idea, and I just want to like either
Yeah.
when I'm in the car, I'll talk it in, or whatever. I'll just do it at home. But there are times where like I'm sitting and talking to my husband, or we're out, and all of a sudden I'll go like this. It's like another idea, huh? I go, yeah, I can't. I don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
But that has been the major thing for me. That's the first thing that came to my mind, was that one.
It's that convenience.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's not an app and we just think of something that is right in front of us. And I think that often at times that's where Apple has done really well. The notes
Yes.
section is phenomenal with even folders and all of that. So no,
Yeah.
I thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
you know, you've over the years have developed a lot of skills and qualities, and you've grown a lot to where you are today. So what do you feel are some core skills or qualities that one should have when starting out their career?
Yeah. I know I've talked about curiosity a lot, so definitely
Right.
that
Yeah.
one. The other one I would say is your level of adaptability, and
Interesting.
that is a constant. Really, it really is, because it's not because we may feel like, all right, we are in a good place, but what you have to remember is things around you are changing. I mean, they get technology changing, AI, all these things that are happening.
Mhm.
How do you need to adapt to that? It's one of these things you got to think about your work and say, is there something that I'm doing as an example where technology can do that instead? So if that's the case, how do I continue to make myself relevant? Or what other things do I need to learn? And how do I need to shift? And of course, it's adaptability to people too. We need to manage up, manage across to people, manage to our teams. And so it is adapting to the different needs and values of the people that are around you. So you're more skillful in how you work with them. That is a key piece. The other one I would say that I do wish I would have learned more about it earlier in my life, resilience and empathy. Resilience,
Ooh.
making the strategic choice to be happy, to have this positive mindset of gratitude, and
Mm.
saying, I often would say, well, I have to do this. I now have to do that. It's changing it to, I get to do this. I get to do that. And so it makes it more of a choice of,
Very.
oh, this is really cool. I get to be the one, I get to write a book.
Hmm.
I get to be on this podcast today. How awesome is that? That builds your resilience, because when you're in those moments of like, oh, things are rough, you go back to all these great things that
Hmm.
you've done. Um, and empathy. We do hear a lot about empathy, but there's empathy certainly to people that you work with, your closest, but it's really understanding what that is and knowing when the own
Hmm.
stories in your head and your own beliefs get in the way of you hearing somebody else. That is so easy to do.
Wow.
So you could be talking to me about something you're challenged with, and how easy that you think about it. You think about a conversation you had with somebody, and all of a sudden in your head, you're like, oh, I remember when that happened to me. I had this, and this, blah, blah, blah. And then you're just losing sight. It's meeting that person there. And how can you be with them more? And so those are things I believe we need more in the world. And if those are the four things, I think those are things that people need to be digging into more.
Those are so spot on. Like I think the point you touched on with I get to can really alter the course of even just one's day.
Yeah.
Like so often there's this talk and conversations around, folks not liking their job or not liking their career, and they want to shift and change, but sometimes we have to go more internal than external and
Yes.
identify like I get to,
Yeah.
I know that it's like I get to do this because I get to provide for my family, or however you want to look at it. I think that that's very, very powerful, so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I just want to say, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been
Yeah.
absolutely phenomenal. But before we wrap up, is there any advice or words of wisdom that you would like to share with our listeners who, are just
Mhm.
beginning their journeys, maybe to inspire them or lift them up at all?
Yeah. Choose success.
Hmm.
Choose it. Things may not come at the pace you want, and you will get impatient. But this is something I learned from my mother. Trust the wait. I think I said that earlier. Trust the wait. It will happen.
Hmm.
Choose success. It will happen.
Amy, I love that. I think that that is so impactful and powerful. And I think I've used those two words multiple times throughout this episode. I think, but what you share, it really is impactful and powerful, So I would definitely highly recommend if anybody's, is listening today, definitely check out Growth Point. I will list it in the show notes. But then, Amy, for listeners today, If they want to, get in touch with you or connect with you, what would be the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So find me. I know common name Amy Clark, but you see Amy Clark with my headline in my business is where women leaders stand at the forefront of lasting positive change. So when you see
Mm,
that, you have the right Amy. And but look me up there. Send me a DM. Would love to have conversations. Anything that I can do to be part of people's growth and opportunity, I'm here for it. Growthmindedleadership.com is my website, and I'm excited that it is currently in a stage of a reboot, and I can't wait to show it when it's ready. So, but for now, you can see some information about me there too.
Oh, that's so exciting. I'm excited to see what you put out there into the
Yeah,
world. So, but thank you so much for your time today and your words of wisdom. I think that this is definitely going to be very impactful for listeners and also just to lay the foundation for them and their mindset work for the future.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's been
Okay.
a pleasure talking to you. Had fun.